Let's head a little bit up north and talk about Joseph Vincent Flacco, who is having a fantastic season. Um, he also was part of some history. Amari Cooper set the Browns franchise single game receiving record last week. He had a game, I think he had like 51 fantasy points, which is absolutely insane. And he's already passed Deshaun Watson's stats this season as far as yards and touchdowns are concerned. But what I did was I put together a comparison of both of their Cleveland careers. And let's look at this because I'm not sure people realize how insane what Joe Flacco has done is. So, Flacco has played in 4 games, and Watson has played in 12 for Cleveland. So, let's just keep that in mind for the rest of these stats. Flacco has only played a third of the games. Flacco is 3-1, whereas Watson is 8-4. So Flacco does have a better win percentage. Flacco's completion rate is 59.4, where Watson edges him out a little bit at 59.8. Watson also edges him out in yards at 2,217 passing yards. However, Flacco has 1,307. So if someone wants to do the math, he'd have like 5,000 yards if he played the same amount of games as Watson at the same rate that he's been playing. And I believe that would lead the NFL. Flacco has 7.5 yards per attempt. And Watson only has 6.5. And Flacco is averaging 326.8 yards per game. Watson is only averaging 184.8. Flacco has a little bit 4 less touchdowns. This is including both seasons. So this season, Flacco does have more touchdowns, but it combined, Watson still edges him out by 4. And Flacco does have the better passer rating at 85.1. So, before this whole thing started, when Deshaun Watson was still the quarterback in Cleveland at the beginning of the year, we were seeing Dorian Thompson-Robinson in the preseason, and we were like, this dude is pretty good. Then we saw him in the regular season, and we were like, this dude is not very good. So he's not coming for Watson's job. Now keep in mind, Watson's contract is fully guaranteed. A ton of money. Like 250, I think it's 250 million, which is a lot of dough to be spreading on a quarterback who was suspended last season for half the season and has been injured for most of the season this year. He hasn't played a full season yet, even between the 2 seasons combined. He's still only at 12 games. So now you've got Joe Flacco, who is playing great football. He struggled with the Jets and the Broncos. He played great football with the Ravens, and now he's back to playing great football with the Browns. Is there a situation, do you think, where next year you try to get rid of Deshaun Watson and keep Joe Flacco around? Because he's got you in playoff mode here.
Um,
Because I know he's
no,
38. No?
no.
Why not?
Joe Flacco is 38, bro.
I
You
know
think
he's 38.
The Cleveland Browns will be, not progressing? Like they need to progress a little bit. The only reason Joe Flacco is playing right now is because Deshaun Watson is hurt, pretty much,
I
and
know.
DTR hasn't played well. So why would you go and let go of Deshaun Watson, who, okay, yeah, hasn't been playing that good, but then at a point, Joe Flacco might only play 1 to 2 more seasons. And how well is his production going to be in next year at 39 years old? Like,
How
yeah,
far?
he got lucky at 38. I mean, it happens, but
How far
still.
are you? How far are you going to get with Deshaun Watson next year? Is Deshaun Watson going to have you in? Would you rather go from, hey, we've got Joe Flacco. He's 38. Yes, he's 38, but we can sign him to a 1-2 year contract, draft a guy, and then have that guy. Because you know what Deshaun Watson is, in my opinion. I know Browns fans still are a little delusional and think that he is this superb athlete like we saw in Houston. but he's not. He has shown no reason to think that. He has played awful in the games he's played in. And Joe Flacco is doing this without Nick Chubb, without like half of their O-line, with a beat up defense, which is still one of the better defenses in the NFL, I know. But his connection with Amari Cooper is fantastic. His connection with David Njoku is fantastic. Two things that Deshaun Watson didn't have. The passing game is dangerous now, and that'll help Nick Chubb, and it'll be a good relationship. Why would you not do that?
For 1 year, bro. He's 38. And yes, where are you going to trade Deshaun Watson? What team is going to want Deshaun Watson?
I have
Nobody's,
no idea. I have
because
no idea.
you cut him, you still have to pay him. So the whole idea of Deshaun Watson leaving Cleveland is not happening. So I hate to say it, but like you can have Deshaun Watson, but he's just going to sit on your bench anyway if you have Joe Flacco start next season throughout the whole season, and he's still going to be paid his guaranteed money because no team's going to want some crappy Deshaun Watson who's not playing that good with all of the baggage that he's had over the last 5 to 6 years with all the drama that has surrounded him. So nobody's going to want him. So, and you can't cut him because you're still guaranteed the money. So you would have to either reconstruct his contract and then trade him, or you would have to trade him and then the other team would have to reconstruct his contract. Because there's no real physical way for there to be like a situation where this is in any way beneficial, you know?
But if you're Kevin Stefanski, how do you go to the Browns fan base and say, hey, yeah, Joe Flacco, he played great, was averaging 300 plus yards per game. Players loved him. He took us on a playoff run. They're still in the running for the 1 seed, mind you. He had us doing really well. We're going to go back to Deshaun Watson, who is averaging less than 200 yards per game, threw a bunch of turnovers. No one really likes him because of his off-the-field issues. How do you justify that?
You can't. And the problem is you have to think about it long term also. Just because Joe Flacco's playing good right now also doesn't mean he's going to play good next year. On top of that, we don't know if Joe Flacco wants this to be his last year anyway. Maybe he wants his last year. Maybe this is Joe Flacco's last year. So if Joe Flacco's like, oh yeah, I'm going to retire next year, the Browns are in no choice but to have to run with Deshaun Watson, regardless of how good Joe Flacco played. So it's one of those things where it's like, I think it's a little too soon to call it, but also it's really hard to say that, you know, you have to do one of those things where it's like you have to know that like the organization, although doesn't want to struggle, they have this baggage that they don't know what to do with. So they're gonna want to use the freaking money that they've paid for this guy. So unless they trade him away, which is probably very unlikely, they'll probably have to trade Deshaun Watson and like a first round pick for him because nobody's gonna want him.
This is just.
I don't think Joe Flacco is going to start next year. And the reason is not because I don't want Joe Flacco to start. I just don't think that logically in the Browns organization, they're going to make the smart decision and have him start because number one, of his age, number two, the contract that they have to deal with on the bench.
So, well, you can't keep Joe Flacco on the bench because then you have a Pittsburgh situation. If you keep Joe Flacco on the bench in Cleveland, then as soon as Deshaun Watson starts doing bad, the fans are going to start cheering for Joe Flacco.
Okay, then you would have to let him go, which will probably prompt him to retire. Unless a team picks him up, which is possible, but I mean he's like 39.
The Jets letting him go didn't prompt him to retire, and that's arguably worse.
Yeah, but also that was a year ago. And now he'll be pushing almost 40. Most quarterbacks only go up until they're 40. Most players don't go past 39, 40 years old, other than maybe Tom Brady. Like Aaron Rodgers pushing 40 is a push. It's a stretch. I don't really expect that long with Aaron Rodgers in New York. Him tearing his Achilles this year is probably the biggest issue because you just wasted that entire year. And now you're going into next year at the age of 40, which he might still play well, but you're only going to get a year out of him. So the Jets on that side should draft a quarterback. And the same thing with the Browns. At that point, you might as well just draft a quarterback. Because if DTR isn't the future, then who is? Because Deshaun Watson isn't playing that good, and you can't have Joe Flacco for more than like 2 or 3 years. So.
And that's what I don't think Joe Flacco is the future face of the franchise or anything like that. I'm saying you're going to have to draft a quarterback either way. We know that. Whether
Maybe.
it's this season or next season. Do you decide for the next 2 years Joe Flacco gives you a better chance at making the playoffs? Or do you just say, hey, we screwed up. We're not going to make the playoffs for 2 years and then have Deshaun Watson be your guy, tank for whatever reason.
Do you call him my guy?
No, you're saying you're the Browns organization.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was like, he is not my guy, bro.
No, but I think that's what you have to do. The Browns are going to go from being a good team, a decent team with Joe Flacco, to being awful again with Deshaun Watson. And you have the best division in football. You can't afford to be short at any position. We've seen that with the Bengals. The Bengals went from being the best team in the division to being the worst because of a few misses. And obviously Joe Burrow went down, but even before that, you missed a few games. You played a little off and you drop. And you can't afford that in the AFC North. And the Browns aren't going to be able to afford that next year. I think Joe Flacco gives them their best chance to make the playoffs. I don't know how the cap works out. I don't know if you can just eat Deshaun Watson's contract, but I would not expect Deshaun Watson to lead you to the playoffs if I am a Browns fan.
Well, I don't either. It's just you have to think about this in this perspective where it's like you still have, I'm looking at his contract right now, it looks like you still have, 3 more years on his contract? And it's his base salary is $46 million over the next 3 years. With him being an unrestricted free agent in 2027. So you're just going to, it's literally, you know what kind of cap fee that's going to be? Unless you trade him somewhere. But like, what team would make a reasonable trade for Deshaun Watson based on the production that Deshaun Watson's had? The Jets?
You'd have to be really desperate.
It would be New England? I doubt it. Like, Vegas? Probably not. Unless something happened where Geno Smith, is not going to play. He's not going to Seattle. And he ain't going back to Houston. And then you think about all the other teams. They all have quarterbacks. Most of them do. So, unless something, tragic happens and you don't hope for that to happen, but unless something tragic happens to some of these guys, there's no way any of these teams are going to be like, let me take a risk and trade for Deshaun Watson. It's just not going to happen. So, I think the Browns might be stuck for a little bit. But even if you sign Joe Flacco, you're still going to have that waste away of Deshaun Watson on your bench. Because nobody's going to take him, you're still going to have to incur the penalty. So even if you sign Joe Flacco for 2 years, let's say Joe Flacco retires at the age of 41 years old. He leaves the Browns organization. Deshaun Watson, let's say he's at 2, so he'll be 40. He'll retire at 40. You're still Joe Flacco is gonna retire. Maybe the Browns would win a Super Bowl by then. Whatever. Guess who your starter is? It's going to be Deshaun Watson. It's the same situation because he's still there. He hasn't left. He still has 2 years left on his contract, or 3 even, I think. So,
he's such a parasite. Remember when all these teams were fighting for Deshaun Watson, and now he's just a parasite for the Browns?
Yeah, it sucks because if the Browns would have never let Baker Mayfield go, you know what kind of team they would have right now? It could be unbelievable.
It'd be pretty good. It'd be dangerous. Thanks for watching that video, guys. If you want to check out a most recent full episode of No Buts About It, that's going to be right over here. Yep, right there. Check that out. And if you just want to see more short clips, we're going to have one right over here for you to watch. Check out No Buts About It on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts so you can listen to us on the go. Once again, have a great day and go do something nice for someone.